They do have a place, but at the same time, when we're dealing with a 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old with anxiety or,
Mhm.
just sensory overwhelm, that's just not going to be found. We need in a bottle. We're going to need to really find real answers and really understand the cause as to why these things are happening so that we can find the solution,
Yeah.
that helps address that and not just, kind of mask over it. So, I talk about and we can get into it, but I talk
Yeah.
about ADHD medications and what they do. And, they stimulate a part of the brain that, really releases dopamine. And that dopamine is a reward center of the brain. And so as you keep taking it, you need more and more and more.
Yeah.
That's why kids will start at 5 milligrams, jump to 10, 15, 20, and then now we're at extended release, right? And so, it just keeps building. You're never
Yeah.
really finding a solution. You're just adding more to it,
It's a mask.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a mask, unfortunately.
yeah.
You use the phrase, or you have, I believe, anxiety is stored
Mhm.
in the nervous system, and I love that.
Yeah.
But can you help parents and, anybody who's interested in, really understand what that actually means in real life?
For sure, yeah. So, before I kinda dive into that, my grandmother used to say my country grandmother, raised in North Carolina, she used to say, "Josh, if you look too far forward, you're anxious, and if you look too far back, you're depressed, and you're only happy when you're looking at the here and now and present." And I was like, "What is she talking about?"
Yeah, yeah. Wise
Now
woman. Yeah.
she was full of wisdom, though, because now when we actually think about anxiety, what is it, right? We are simply, all of the possible combinations of things to happen, whatever we're anxious about. It could be, what's going to happen, at summer camp, in a few hours, as we wake up. It could be, about for us adults, about bills or taxes or whatever, So we're just thinking about all the possible combinations. And really what anxiety is it's an overstimulation. And I don't mean to oversimplify it, but for our listeners and our viewers, really anxiety is an overstimulation and an override of the brain to process thoughts and emotions in a clear, concise way. And
Mhm.
so when we're talking about anxiety, it really does stem from the nervous system and from how the brain is processing. And so, when I look at anxiety, a lot of times we have physiologic responses to anxiety, right? Our brain gets overwhelmed. It runs. It's almost like a hamster wheel. It's going a million miles a minute and we can't slow it down. And as a result, right, we get the sympathetic response. We get heart rate that goes up, blood pressure goes up, right? We're not sleeping, we're not eating. We can't really focus on one task, right? That explains a lot of what our children are going through, right? They're not sleeping, they're not eating, they're not pooping. They're struggling on a very basic fundamental level because of how excitatory their brain is. And so now what we're seeing through science and through research and meta-analysis is that vagal tone, the vagus nerve, is really linked. And if we have a low vagal tone, we oftentimes see magnification of anxiety and depression and, these type of mental health disorders. And so
Sure.
a lot of times, it's like, well, maybe it's not a pill that we need. Maybe it's regulation of the nervous system and how it's
Yeah.
processing information coming in.
Yeah. So let's be real though for a second. No
Yeah,
parent is walking around saying my child has poor vagal tone.
you're right.
They're saying my kid screams when,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
socks are too tight, right?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.